Hey, what is going on, everybody? I am live and in person. I don't do a lot of these, Jim. I am here at the Salsa Queen. Do you guys have like a fancy name? Is it like
A fancy name.
like the Salsa Queen Castle, or is it just like HQ?
No, we don't. But you do know my wife legally changed her name to Salsa Queen.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you look at her passport or driver's license, it's Salsa Queen. You know, we used to go to events, right? And no one would ever say her real name. They'd always say, "Hey, the Salsa Queen's in the house." So she said, "Done."
So she went to the government and said,
it was part of her citizenship, right? So she had a green card up until that point, and she was going in to become a naturalized citizen. And at that point, when you're finished with the interview, they ask you if you want to change your name.
okay,
And so she said, "Well, let's do it."
let's do it. So then Jim Birch, right?
Yes.
That's how that would make you legally the Salsa King. Fair to say?
I don't know. I always call Mr. Salsa Queen. So
Mr. Salsa Queen. All right. I love it. Well, that if you are not watching this, first of all, what are you doing? This is a awesome backdrop here. I'm here in the HQ of Salsa Queen, right in the heart of Salt Lake City, Utah. And we're going to talk about some really incredible packaging innovations that they have. We're going to talk about, Jim, I'd love to hear about just the story of the brand, because you guys are blowing up. And like, I was today's day old when I knew that your wife is the Salsa Queen. I didn't know. I didn't do any. I'm sorry, I didn't do my research.
Oh, that's fine.
But this is why I like the live discovery. So let's get into it here right now.
Sure. Well, my wife started this 11 years ago. She was coming out of a divorce. I was coming out of a divorce. Well, actually, I'll even back up a little bit further. So when she came to the U.S., she was about 16 or 17.
Okay.
From Mexico, from Monterrey is where she's originally from. And she never finished high school. She came here and, there were some issues over language and some conflict. So she never finished high school. And then, she got married, started having babies. So she didn't have any work experience. And she really had no education. And so you fast forward to where she was at that point, 7 kids, no work, no education. And I was like, okay, well, how are we going to make this work? What are you going to do to provide for yourself and your kids? And so we kicked around a lot of different ideas. I had some ideas that were more like European coffee and food. And, we actually played with that for a bit, but it just didn't really, capture her attention. And finally, one day she came to me, she says, "I want to do salsas." It's like, yeah, all right, there we go.
But at this point, had you tried the salsa and you're like, absolutely, you got to get into salsa?
She's always been an amazing cook.
Okay.
So that was never questioned. And she'd always have salsas, different kinds of salsas that she would make. And they were always amazing. But, my background's always been in tech or finance.
Oh, okay.
Not food. And so it's like, okay, I guess, so I didn't know how it was going to work. And so when she told me that, I think it was like a day or two later, I said, well, let's see what kind of interest there is. And I put it out on Facebook back in the day, right? So,
okay. Hey, this was 11 years ago?
11 years ago. Hey, my girlfriend's going to do some salsas, Anybody interested in buying? And we started getting people that would say yes. And so we were like salsa dealers. We met at 4 different parking lots around the valley.
Okay.
And we tell people we're going to be here at noon or we'll be here at 2. Come by, get your salsas and give us, cash, right? And so we did that. And the first, I think it was a Saturday, we, did that the whole day. And then later in the week, I posted again, hey, anybody interested? And we had a lot of people that would rebuy. And so I said, well, 1, we didn't kill anybody, positive. And then 2, they wanted to repurchase. And so we did that for a couple of weeks. And we started seeing it grow. And so then I said, well, looks like it could maybe be business. And so then she signed up for Farmers Market, Wheeler Farm.
Okay.
And
there's a lot of great farmers market. This is an international podcast.
Yeah.
But if you don't know this about Salt Lake City, we've got some killer farmers markets here. It's a great spot for shout out to whoever organizes those things, because they're a blast. Okay, so you're at the farmers market.
So Wheeler's, they actually call us the salsa market, because there were at least back then there were like 4 or 5 vendors that were selling their salsas.
Okay.
So she had a mentor, and he told her to take 50 containers. so she wouldn't feel bad if, she didn't sell out. Well, my wife being my wife, she took 100 containers.
Of course.
And within 2 hours sold out.
Wow.
And so she had $500 in her hand, and she goes, I think I could make a business out of this.
Was she, was there like taste testing? And so people would try it and be like, I need 5 of those immediately.
Yep.
Okay.
And the nice thing about the farmers markets is it gives you a chance to really do constant iteration to see what people liked. And so, we had different kinds of salsas that she was trying, obviously roasted corn. She did a berry salsa. She did an avocado bacon salsa, right? Not
kosher, but sounds delicious.
It was awesome. But by the end of the summer, she had like 4 or 5 that people constantly liked and bought. Okay. So she knew which were the ones to use. Of course, with farmers markets here in Utah, you've got a long winter, so they don't last forever.
Right.
And, we chatted about that and said, well, you probably need to get into some stores. So she went out and approached 4 local stores, Pirate O's, Peterson's, the market, and the store.
Okay.
All local stores here, and got into each of them. And that really got her through that winter. Next year, more farmers markets. And so by this point, she's building up a base. And then she was able to go in and get into Harmon's and Smith's and some of the local bigger chains, right? And so it just kind of kept growing. She was killing herself at that point. So we brought in a business partner because she was doing production, invoicing, deliveries, and sampling. And, that's a lot of work.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Real quick, was there an early iteration that, I'll give you a preface to this story.
Sure.
So I went to college in Fort Collins, Colorado, the Harvard of the Rockies. Go Rams. I don't actually have my CSU socks on. You've got your U shirt. I've got my CSU Ram socks on.
Yeah, I love that too. That's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. And so this was like early New Belgium when they had first started, and we got to know the people who were involved. And I remember they weren't so sure that Fat Tire was going to be great, but they had a beer called 1554 that was winning awards, and they were like, this is our beer. And they kind of and then Fat Tire took off. They were like, oh, so is there a similar version where you were like, she made this salsa, it was a bacon avocado jalapeno that I thought was the best salsa ever, and it didn't really land? Did you have any of those?
Well, we really did like that bacon avocado, but the problem is the shelf life. I mean, anything with avocado, and you really don't get a lot of shelf life out of it.
Shout out to the packaging. Talking about shelf life already.
She also had another one. It was an uncooked mango pineapple salsa. Loved it, but with that much sugar, it would go bad very quickly.
Okay.
So she ended up making that a cooked one, so that lasted longer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're in Harmon's.
Yep.
How long ago did you start getting into the sort of the bigger?
So that would have been it was about 2 years into it. So roughly, like 9 years ago, 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, she started getting into those. And they call it DSD. So that's where you do direct store delivery. So that's where at one point we had 5 delivery vans, and the guys would go out in the morning and they would, service 6 to 10 stores.
And at this point, your packaging was probably a lot of stock.
It was
tubs. And
it was. We'd go to Restaurant Depot, would buy it, and it was
just a cool store, by the way.
And we were doing hand, filling. So very little automation because that gets to be expensive with the equipment. So yeah, that's what we were using. And 6 years ago, we made some changes, bought out a business partner. I came in, and the goal was then to kind of scale beyond the 80 stores. We were mostly in the greater Salt Lake area at that point, right? And the goal was, well, let's kind of ramp this up and see what we can do with it. Take it, more regionally, maybe nationally if we could. And that obviously meant new changes. We moved into this building, for example, which is 14,000 square foot. We actually invested in some equipment, and that made a change. For example, for the first time, we could start to put it would start to automatically fill. So we didn't have to do the hand filling anymore, which is, boy, talking about carpal tunnel, that was a pain.
Yeah.
And then It also allowed us to put a protective film on top of our container.
Okay.
And that increased our shelf life by 20% just doing that.
Huge.
Thing. It was huge.
Yeah, because now you can make bigger batches. You can
bigger batches.
You can buy your packaging in bigger bulk. Like there's a lot of cost advantages to that. And your waste isn't.
Exactly. So when we were doing DSD, the deliveries ourselves, we would generally have to make, and we had 6 different flavors at that point of salsas and dips, and we would have to make at least 4 different versions a day. So we'd have enough product to take to the stores the next day. Oh. So you'd make it a little batch, and then you'd have to clean up and sanitize, and you make another little batch. Very inefficient. So when we started to go down this path, we could start to get some economies. We could run something for half a day, at least. And so we moved into distribution. So we went from 80 stores in the greater Salt Lake area to overnight with Smith's. We went into 150 stores with them. Wow. And that's New Mexico to Nevada to Wyoming. And then we've just kept growing and scaling at that point. So then we went into, we're probably close to 1,000 stores, but now we're in places like Costco and,
that's where I first saw you guys actually was in Costco.
Costco's been great. But it's a tiger by the tail, right? And they've been really good to work with. We love our Costco. And it's certainly giving us a lot more exposure, to other people, other customers, and it's been great.
Yeah, we had a whole myself and a friend of mine, Avelio, who does a lot of packaging design stuff. We did a whole episode just about the complexities of Costco packaging versus standard. You're laughing because you had to walk it, right?
Like you had to walk it. Even the pallets, right? They require CHEP pallets, which is like what?
Yep.
These pallets don't look any different other than they're blue. But then we have to start tracking those. We have to pay. We have to do this and this. And, obviously, as we scaled and started going outside this market and into more stores, we had to not only get SQF certified, but now we have to go through Costco audits. And so now you have to start investing into more process and people and documentation. So it's very different.
So obviously your wife is 99% of the story, right? Like she's got it's her recipes, it's her brand, it's this. Yep. I have to imagine though, there's at least, I want to give you a 1% credit here if we can. In that, were you able to lean on your kind of finance and tech background to bring in maybe some of these we'll call them growth levers as you start talking about operations and scaling and growing these companies is very, very, very difficult.
Yeah. I would say, I wouldn't say I did it all. I would say I hired people who did it for us. People who knew what they were doing. Because like I said, my background's not food.
Yeah.
And so, SQF certification. Okay. I've never done that.
Yeah.
I've gone through ISO and other things that are somewhat similar, but in different industries. And so key was really bringing in people who knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Here. Yeah. Well, I want to talk. We'll have a commercial break right now. But when we come back, I want to talk about this. This is the coolest packaging innovation I have seen in the salsa industry. I didn't even know it existed until I walked in the building today. So we're going to come back after the break, and we are going to talk about freeze-dried salsa. We'll be right back. Break. All right. Hey, and we're back with Jim Birch, the CEO of Salsa Queen. And we just heard a great, just the history of the company is fantastic. I'm sure there's the story's being told a couple of times, which is awesome. But this is a packaging podcast.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you have that's cool? And you were like, freeze-dried salsa. And it was like the record scratch. I was like, excuse me?
What was that?
Now, as I've been thinking about this, so this is we've got a stand-up pouch here. It's got a zipper. Not a zipper. It's got a tear notch. You can reclose it. Would people need to reseal this? Are they going to use a little bit at a time?
Well, the reason they can reseal it is you can actually put the water right in the pouch. Zip it, and then just shake it for a few minutes, and boom, you're done.
And then you just have your chips with you if you're camping or whatever.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Oh man, that's genius.
And the reason this came about is, first of all, with our fresh salsas, we've got a 12-week shelf life, right?
Yeah.
So they have to be refrigerated. They're expensive to ship.
It's heavy. You're shipping liquid.
It's heavy, and it's only 12 weeks. And so we happened to be at one of those home expo shows, and they had freeze-dried candy.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder what our salsas would be like.
This is becoming a whole thing. Freeze-dried
Yeah.
candies become a whole industry.
Oh, it's a big industry.
I just had a gentleman named Fred Hart who has his finger at the pulse of innovation in food and beverage.
Yeah.
And he just told me about this. Like, I was like, what's innovative? He's like, freeze-dried.
Yeah.
So this week I did that interview.
Oh, did you really?
So I'm like, all right, what is happening?
Yeah. And so we started experimenting. We bought some of the Harvest Right freeze dryers.
Yeah.
And we started playing around with our salsas.
Utah company, right?
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Yeah. They're just up north. And we played around with it just to see what it would be like. And our salsas are incredible because literally you just add water and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between this and fresh.
Oh my gosh.
And then the other cool thing about this, well, there's several things, but you can use this as a seasoning or a dry rub. So now you've expanded what you can do with it.
I'm done.
But
that's incredible.
The other thing, I mean, obviously we've got a long shelf life. It's super lightweight. You can feel how light it is. This will make 3 to 4 ounces of salsa when you add the water back in. But shipping, that's a game changer.
Oh my gosh.
We ship this to international customers already. So if you're in
100%.
Australia and you want real Mexican salsa, you buy 20 of these and we ship it for free.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
It's incredible. We can put 5,000 of these on a single pallet and it weighs under 300 pounds.
That's also, look at the back of this packaging here. It says great for camping, road trips, and space travel.
Space travel. Yeah, my wife's dream is that Elon Musk starts taking this with him to Mars and the moon and beyond.
But why not, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So where did this, was this sort of like, you'd mentioned you're going, okay, we've got, we logistically, it's just tough. Food is tough, right? It's just because you got all these complexities, like you've already mentioned, you've got all the certifications and the shipping and the freight and the filling and the blah, 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 blah. And then you come up with this. And what this reminds me of is like in the laundry detergent space. So I had a gentleman on from a company called True Earth, and they took laundry detergent, liquid laundry detergent, and formed it into sheets.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Have you seen these sheets before? And it's the same kind of thing, right? It's like
you don't have
shipping.
You don't have all the waste or the heaviness with the water that you're basically shipping.
Right. Yeah. So it's just gonna. Sorry, I got a phone call there in the middle of it. These podcasts can be a little bit wild, but yeah. So instead of shipping these big giant jugs all across the U.S., he was like, "Well, we can just put these in a box."
Yeah.
And ship the same thing in a.
So what's interesting is we've obviously been working with big retailers, and a lot of them are focusing on kind of the environmental impact of your product.
Yeah.
Right. Aside from whether it's recyclable, yada, yada, yada. But this is amazing because one, it doesn't have to be refrigerated. You're not shipping water. And so when you start looking at the diesel cost on a trader, this reduces 90% of that cost and that weight. Because you've basically just taken out the water. So,
man,
from an environmental standpoint, this is awesome.
It's crazy. And I'm going to ask you kind of a packaging nerd question.
Sure.
That you may or may not know. But when you freeze dry this, because this is a pretty, I'm guessing this has like a metallized foil layer.
Yeah.
Do you have to have like a pretty significantly solid barrier to this because it's freeze dried, and if the minute moisture begins to interact,
it's got like mylar to create that water barrier. Yes.
Okay.
And so we also have we've got 4 versions of our freeze dried. This happens to be our roasted tomatillo. We also have a larger size. So this is 0.6 ounce. We have one. I wish I probably can go grab one real quick, but it's 8 ounce. So it's like for pantries. And that one actually has a little oxygen absorber in it.
Yeah.
Moisture too. So, but I mean, that's great for pantries because, think about how many times you've gone to the fridge late at night and you want some chips and salsa and you pull out that salsa and what do you see? Mold, right?
Yep.
Or something that's bad. This way you just make what you want and then you stick the rest back in the pantry. So you're always having fresh salsas.
And the thing is that for the most part, right, everybody has water. So, I mean, in industrialized, I don't want to assume that everybody has access to water, right? I've been to plenty of countries where that's tough, but the people who would buy your salsa have water.
Yep.
So the question that I would have with this, because I'm nerding out on this is awesome, but so I've lived in Colorado and I've lived in California.
Yeah.
The water in these places tastes different. Does it impact the flavor of the salsa at all, or the salsa
You
pretty
would notice it.
well?
Yeah, because
Okay.
because my wife has never. I mean, these really aren't really spicy,
Okay.
but they have a lot of flavor.
Yeah.
And so you're not gonna notice the flavor of the water because the flavor of the salsa.
That's what I was gonna. That's what I assumed. Yeah. Okay. Because I would imagine that would be. This is fantastic, and I could even see future iterations where we have like in the Pacific Northwest, they're doing a lot of experimentation with returnable packaging.
Yeah.
So you can imagine this. You have this 8-ounce, but imagine you have like a bin that people go pay by weight, and they bring their thing in, and they
scoop it in,
and then they just scoop it in. They're just reusing their own packaging over and over and over again. That would be so cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's been very interesting. We've become, and it's because it's a new industry or a new segment. We've become the world's largest producer of freeze-dried salsas. We've produced several 100,000 of these already.
And how long has this been around?
A couple of years now. We're in all the Bass Pro and the Cabela's.
Okay.
We ship it, of course, online, and we're expanding all the time.
Jeez, I can't believe I didn't know about this because it's not in Costco. That's the problem.
It's not. What's funny is we actually had a discussion with Costco. Their LA group wanted to do with the bigger pouch, the 8-ounce, some promos in there. But it's you have some education with this because people understand salsa, they understand freeze dried. But you put the two together, and it's like, how does it work?
Right.
Because there are products out there where you have to add tomatoes or you have to add something. But just water. Literally, you just add water.
Man, tailgating at a U game, just show up. Yeah.
You can keep this in your truck. I've got several of these just in my truck. So if I'm out and about or kid soccer game, whatever, and I want some salsa, it's there.
We need freeze dried or expandable chips that you just can like add water to. Their next task.
Next.
Well, Jim, where can people go buy either this or we mentioned a couple of retailers, but there's online. There's all sorts
online,
of ways,
of course, right? You can buy it online, and like I said, we ship. If you buy 5 of these or a variety pack, we ship it for free anywhere in the U.S.
Man,
so if you've got friends, family, servicemen, missionaries that are overseas, send them a taste of Utah. It's very easy.
Jeez.
So online's easy. If you go to our webpage, we also have a store locator, so you can find one close to you.
Okay.
We're adding new stores all the time. We haven't announced a few, but we're going to be adding about 600 stores here before fall.
Nice.
So that's growing all huge. The time. But Costco, Kroger, Albertsons,
Harmons. Are you still in Harmons?
We're still in Harmons.
Okay.
Yep. This is also available on Amazon. Amazon has a lot of fees. So it's actually cheaper for us to ship it direct than to go through Amazon.
Go support the Salsa Queen by going to salsaqueen.com and buying your stuff directly from the source. I mean, go support the retailers. Obviously, you want to you got to have a good relationship with your retailers, but and go buy some gifts for people.
These are great stocking stuffers. If you have anybody that's an outdoorsman, hiking, camping, fishing.
Oh yeah.
That's and these are cheap. These are like $3.99 retail.
Man.
So it's just a great price point too.
That's awesome. Well, Jim, I appreciate you telling me all about all these things that I'm glad I didn't do any research on. I got to know now. Everyone go check out salsaqueen.com. They got all sorts of great stuff. Support local businesses, support, family-owned businesses. I think it's a really big deal. So I appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit about packaging and a lot about salsa.
Awesome. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Well, here, let me get a couple for you to take so you can try some of these other ones out.